I was not sure how I wanted to start this review. I think that's how it is, because I've had a time of it lately. Like, I've just not been having the greatest week or month and a half. And this book, it did not help. So now that things are coming to a close, I was celebrating with margaritas. And that margarita mix that I bought, generally I make my own margaritas, but I haven't had time, and I tasted this one. I was like, oh, that's great. Apparently it's not great. Ew. Ew, 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 ew. So I don't even have that to help me through. And my hair is bothering me. We're gonna see how this goes. It can go one of two ways. It can be super awesome because I'm going to rip this book to shreds. Or it can be super terrible because it was so awful and everything else in my life is so stressful that I just can't get through it. But we will see, shall we? Today's book is Roseblood by A.G. Howard. I could not get through a single page from the very beginning without an eye roll. So I was like, you know what? I've had a crappy time of it lately. So I'm gonna do a rant review because those make me feel good. I'm sorry if that makes me petty. I guess because I'm tearing someone else down to lift myself up. I don't really feel like I'm lifting myself up. Rant reviews, there's so much to talk about that they're not boring. And I really just feel like having a good old time. There are very few positives about Roseblood, which is why I'm just gonna go through them. So first, I love the fact that it's based off of Phantom of the Opera. That's just not a story that people typically write about. And so I was like, awesome, especially because I enjoy the Phantom of the Opera. So I wanted to see what she was gonna do with it. So I like what it's based off of. I like the premise. I do like that it's partly in first person present. It took me a while to actually realize that she switches back and forth because there are two narrators, and by the end I did not like that we went from past to present, but that's kind of a whole other issue because I thought that the story would have been more effective if it had only been one narrator. But yes, I like to see first person present because I do not know what it is about the writing community, but they hate on writers who do first person present. But hello, where would we be without the Hunger Games? And what else? Divergent. Like, we have really popular series that are first person present, so obviously it can be done. It can be done well, it can be done effectively. So it was really nice to see yet one more story in first person present. And finally, I enjoyed, well, actually, no, there's two more things. So the two narrators are Rune and then a guy named Thorn. Here's a spoiler. They are psychic vampires, which means they don't feed off blood, they feed off people's auras. So actually, I liked that. I didn't necessarily see it coming. I don't know if it's because it was so well written or because it was that poorly written, but I did like that twist because I was like, all right, like, it was a mystery to be solved. So not necessarily that they were psychic vampires, but there was a mystery to be solved. As poorly as I thought it was done, I did like that there was something stringing me along. The final thing, and actually this is my absolute favorite, this is the only thing I thought that Howard did right, was with Thorne's background. As I said, I could not get through a single page without rolling my eyes. And I guess that's a bit of a lie because every now and again, towards like the middle and end, there were small portions where we got Thorne's history, and those were actually really effective. They were really interesting. And I wish that she could have pulled that off throughout the rest of the book. But instead, this whole book was one giant tell. And then we got Thorne's backstory, and it was complete showing. It was fantastic. I just don't understand how she could not have executed that throughout the entire book. But now, let me give you a summary. Rune, okay? And before I even get into this, I cannot stand Rune. She's a humble braggart. Spoiler alert, Rune is one half of the reincarnation of Christine. So if you know anything about Phantom of the Opera, or if you don't, here we go. Christine Daae is basically the understudy at an opera house. the angel, the Phantom of the Opera, takes her under his wing, teaches her how to sing, and she becomes fantastic. Then at the end, she has fallen in love with this other guy. And so she kind of has to choose between the Phantom of the Opera, who is her angel of music, or her love interest. And so in the end, she does not choose the Phantom, and, you know, he gets chased off by a mob, and we don't really know if he lives or dies. Or anyways, so in Roseblood, the same thing kind of happens. Christine chooses this other guy. In the end, she realizes, like, maybe the Phantom was her true love. They get back together, things happen. She ends up dying, and he plays a violin, which ends up capturing her soul, somehow splits it in two so that Thorn gets part and Rune gets part. Because of this, Rune gets Christine's voice. So she's this magnificent singer who has never had to work a day in her life. I'm gonna do a montage of all the little vomit-worthy pieces of this book where I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But one of the first is Rune gets ill, physically ill, whenever she sings. We don't know why, and so her mom is like, maybe if I ship you off to this boarding school in France that only allows American students. Seriously? Ship you off to this school where it just so happens your aunt works and she will be your benefactor, and maybe they can teach you how to sing so you don't get sick. So they're in the car, in the limo, because they are poor. The aunt is wealthy, and she has sent this limo. She has enabled them to, like, had this shopping spree in Paris and blah, 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 vomit, vomit, vomit. So now they're actually on their way to the school. And the thing about Rune is she can't hear an operatic song without just bursting forth into song. I mean, actually, there are exceptions, like it has to speak to her or something. And so she's in the limo, and this Russian opera is speaking to her. But please, explain to me why a limo driver is playing a Russian opera, okay? Thank you. So yes, she's like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to control it, but what happens if I just break out into my high C? I'm gonna break a window. And I'm like, oh my freaking goodness. You have got to be kidding me. We get a lot of that in this book. We also get her fashionista-ness, and I could have cared less. Like, there were so many elements about Rune. Can we start with her name? But so many elements about Rune that I felt were really forced. Instead of letting me get to know her, it was like, look, all the ways that Rune is fantastic. So yeah, they get to the school, and here is another fantastic moment, okay? So can I just tell you how overwritten this book is? Like, maybe because this is like Howard's 5th or 6th book. She's like a George R.R. Martin. She's a Stephen King. She's a J.K. Rowling, where she can just get away with bad writing. Not to say that they get away with bad writing, although Stephen King, the man knows how to just go on and on and on. Maybe that's why she's able to write the way she does, is because she has earned the right. We get to this old opera house that has been turned into a school, and it's garish. Like, oh my gosh, the descriptions of this place are heinous. Rune, she steps inside, and it just so happens that the students are auditioning for the yearly opera or whatever they're doing. This song was the one playing in the limo. So all of that stuff she had suppressed, like, comes bursting forth. My thought is, okay, she can't hold it in any longer. So in the middle of this grand entrance hall, she's just gonna burst forth into that high C. No, you know what she does? I gotta find the bathroom. Like, I gotta get away from anybody, namely her mother and her aunt and the limo driver. Then I let my song out there. Well, I can't get to the bathroom, so I'm gonna run into the audition room, interrupt the girl who's auditioning, belt out my high C, and then faint. Well, not faint, but it's kind of like It Takes Two with the Olsen twins, where, you know, one of the twins, whenever she doesn't know what to do, she just, like, freezes up and faints. That's exactly what Rune does. She's like, I've made a fool of myself, I've interrupted, and now this girl hates me, so I'm just gonna pretend like, I mean, honestly, I don't know why she thought she needed to faint, but it gets better, guys. It gets better, because she faints, and a guy gathers her up into his arms and rushes her to safety. And not only is he a Prince Charming or a knight in shining armor, but his name is Jax. Yes, J-A-X, Jax, short for Jackson. Like, again, can we get a worse name? I don't mind Jackson, but you put Jax into this whole picture, and it is just too much, too pretentious. Are we trying super hard to be cool or what? Oh, and you know what I forgot to tell you? They're pulling up to this school, and she sees this guy in the garden, and he has these coppery eyes. She can't really see his face, but he has these flowers, and they like wilt in his hand or something. I don't know. But she's captivated by this guy. So she's in her room. Her like peer advisor, her kind of guide through the school, her name is Sunny. I don't really mind Sunny, but Sunny is a Southern belle. I think she's from Texas or something. And this whole character just proves to me, or makes me understand, why writers are told not to write in the vernacular, which means do not write the way that a character speaks. Like, if it is an extremely Southern character, do not write it out phonetically, essentially. Because Sunny, she's like the stereotypical cliche Southern girl, and the words that she uses, I'm like, I could have gotten this without you writing it this way. All I needed to know was she was extremely Southern. I didn't need to get a bunch of y'alls and like poor grammar. Sunny appears, and because Rune has decided not to eat in a cafeteria, which, let me tell you about this cafeteria, it was ridiculous. Not in a good way, but not only is it a cafeteria, it's a movie theater, because these students are so serious about their craft that they have to study during meal times. And so the cafeteria is actually a movie theater where they project movies onto the walls so that students can study and write notes as they eat. Because this sounds super fun, right? Because Rune decides, I'm too embarrassed to see anybody, her mother or somebody, I don't know, I don't care, brings her soup. She and Sunny hanging out in her room, and she's like, okay, so Sunny, tell me about the gardener. And Sunny's like, there is no gardener, and the one guy who's like the groundskeeper, you know, he's like really old. And this shocks Rune so much, she spills her soup in her lap. Because that's shocking. The person she saw in the garden is not the gardener. How many students are at this school? Like, it could have been anybody. She's so shocked that it's not the gardener that she drops hot soup in her lap. This is the most ridiculous book I have read in a really long time. On a scale of 1 to Twilight, this is like a -10. This is a truly awful, like, heinous book. Eventually, we get Thorn's perspective, and so Thorn, if you hadn't guessed, is the guy from the garden. He has been raised by the Phantom of the Opera, and as I said, they are psychic vampires. So what they can do is they don't drink people's blood, but they can absorb their auras. They can absorb a person's life force, which can then extend their own life. And so what the Phantom has done, so it's like 100 odd years after Phantom of the Opera occurred, because this is supposed to be the opera house where it all took place. They have been living underground. Well, not Thorn, he's like legitimately 19. So we learned that the Phantom had sought Thorn out because Thorn had the voice of an angel. The Phantom thought Thorn was Christine reincarnate, and he learns, first off, it's not a girl, it's a boy. Okay, so there is a YouTuber named Jamie French, who I think is hilarious, but she does makeup and movies. But what she does is she reviews really bad movies, and a lot of the time she's just like, there's no plot, there's no reasoning for anything, and that's kind of what goes on in this entire book. But yeah, so that's kind of what I feel is going on with Thorn a little bit. So his voice, if he sings, okay, he can get people to such an emotional level that they will divulge their deepest, darkest secrets. At this point, since he's an orphan, he has been sold into these services of his mother's old pimp. What he's been doing is he's singing to all these clients, essentially driving them away because he is making them reveal their deepest, darkest secrets, and therefore they don't want to buy any of these children. And so the pimp is like, all right, I'm gonna pour like carbolic acid down your throat so you can no longer sing. So not only does the Phantom find out that Thorn is not his Christine, he also realizes Thorn cannot sing. But anyways, he decides, okay, I'll adopt Thorn, and I guess the long game is that he knows that something about this violin meant that Christine's soul was going to be split in two. And so, I mean, this part actually wasn't so bad, like so cliche, but it's, I forget the word, it's French for twin souls. He knew eventually he'd have to find the twin soul, and that twin soul would be the one he's looking for. That would be the Christine, even though they're both Christine, but whatever. The only one that he would actually have to kill is Rune, because even though Thorn could sing, apparently the real voice was with Rune. Makes sense to you? It doesn't make sense to me. We realize that he has been brought up by the Phantom of the Opera, and the Phantom, or Eric as he's called in this book, has been grooming Thorn to cut out Rune's voice box or something like that, so that it can then be transplanted. Here's huge spoiler, guys. Kind of comes out of left field, and I don't know how I feel about it. As I told you, Christine had come back to the Phantom. They were also twin flames. In the beginning, she was too young to truly understand it, so that's why she chose Raoul. But eventually, she grew up, and she realized, oh, the Phantom is my true love. So she comes back to him. They accidentally get pregnant. She goes into early labor, the baby dies. The Phantom, so here's the thing, the Phantom, without her knowing it, takes this baby, puts it into kind of like an incubation thing, and keeps it alive, like siphons off some of his life force, like the energy that he gets from other people, and siphons it into this fetus, this baby. And so then she finds out what he's doing, and she's like, you're hideous, you're a monster, I'm leaving. Then on her deathbed, he comes and he plays this, and her soul gets trapped in this violin, and Rune, her father, inherits his violin by various means. It unleashes Christine's voice. So one day when she's like 3, he's playing the violin and she starts singing and the voice is unleashed and blah, 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 blah. This is what is gonna happen, is they're gonna get Rune, they're gonna cut out her voice or whatever, they're gonna put it into the fetus, because somehow this is going to bring Christine back to Eric. I don't get it. It's overblown. Wouldn't you know it, Thorn and Rune fall in love, and Thorn's like, I can't go through with this dastardly plan anymore. And they try to outsmart the Phantom, and then the Phantom is like, I've been one step ahead of you the whole time. And not only is Rune a psychic vampire, but her aunt, the one who is her benefactor, is a vampire of sorts as well as one of the other teachers, like the really mean teacher that every school has to have. Although to some different extent, I don't get it. I don't care. Again, I just thought it was really dumb, because when Rune finds out that these 2 women in her life, one she respects, one she doesn't, have these qualities, she's just like, oh yeah, that's cool. She's not scared. She's not surprised. She's just like, all right, okay. We find out that one of her teachers, who's like the cool rock star chemistry teacher, is somehow under the Phantom's thumb. So a lot of things that are happening around Rune are because of him. Again, I thought it came out of left field. Like, so many of these characters were underdeveloped and had no point whatsoever. At the end of the book, when the Phantom is going to carry out his dastardly deed, now we have Thorn's point of view, where he's like, how can I get Rune out of here? So he floods the underwater chamber at risk of his own life. He somehow gets Rune out of there. The entire school, the entire opera house is set on fire. For some reason or another, it's all blamed on the rock star chemistry teacher. We get like an epilogue in which everything is hunky-dory. The school is still continuing, just in a new location. Everybody's getting what they want. The rock star chemistry teacher was found dead in the ruins of the school, which is going to be rebuilt. Rune is learning how to harness her vampiricness. She is enjoying her voice. She is embracing her Christine-ness. And then her aunt is like, I'm gonna go back to the school. Why don't you come with me? Let's get some closure. Who do you think shows up but Thorn? And she's like, oh, I thought you died. And he's like, but we're twin flames. Like, I thought you knew that I survived. Like, you could feel it. And she's like, how was I supposed to know that? And then they have sex. There we go. Oh, and he tells her, well, you know, and I like secreted the Phantom off to Canada. Because, so the thing about Thorn is that he was the product of, I think it's like a succubus and his mother. So it's like the succubus got into his mother's dreams, you know, extracted enough of her life force, but impregnated her at the same time. That's his parentage. And so he found part of his family in Canada. And that is where he took Eric, because Eric needs to stay far away from Rune. And then they have sex. And I'm just like, why did we let the Phantom live? He wasn't a good dude. For both of these characters, by the end, they were like, he needs to die. He is an unhealthy part of our lives. He's near death anyways, because he's been siphoning off all of his life force into this corpse, which I still don't understand how he thought he was going to bring it back to life, because it died. It wasn't on the brink of death, and then he put it in this incubation tube and kept it alive with chemicals and whatnot, and his own life force. Like, it died. So I don't know, maybe it was basically just preserving the corpse, and all he needed were certain elements to reinvigorate the corpse. I don't know. We do find out that the baby was buried, so that plan did not come to fruition. But I just thought this was the dumbest thing I had ever read. Howard took a really great idea and went way too far. And I feel like that was the problem she had with her Splintered series, where she started out with this really great idea, and then she inserted a love triangle, and then she just kept going until at the very end, the main character never had to choose. She got to live her best life with both boys, once as a mortal and once as an immortal. And I'm like, is there no such thing as a choice in your world? Actually, I want to talk about Rune's grandma, Lil. Her dad dies from cancer. Over the course of the novel, we learn that maybe it wasn't natural cancer, but because she is a vampire, every time he played the violin and she sang, she was able to absorb his life force. I guess then that caused cancer. Need I say more about my thoughts? And the grandmother, Lil, comes over from France, because that's where the family is from, because the father had been a violin prodigy who came to America as an exchange student, gave up his dreams for an American high school girl. Family's from France, so after the dad dies, she comes and basically tries to kill Rune. We never know why. I mean, we eventually learn that somehow the grandmother knew what was going on with Rune. Like, she knew that Rune was essentially the cause of the dad's death, that Rune was unnatural, but we never, ever get to talk or see the grandmother because she's in a mental institution. So the first thing she tried to do was drown Rune. And the second thing she did was she came, I think it was like the first grade class production or something, or Valentine's Day party, I think. And she sets the whole thing on fire. Instead of being punished in America, she is confined to a French mental institution. I think. I don't really know. All I know is that Charlotte visits her all the time and Rune never goes. And then we learn from Charlotte that, you know, the grandmother was just trying to help Rune because something was wrong with her. Pretty poor explanation if you ask me. But we never get to meet Lil because she's too fragile. Her mental state is not what it should be. And I'm like, someone just mailed this in. I thought that really could have done wonders for the book if we got the grandmother in there a little bit. And let's go on another thing. As I mentioned, I thought that this book could have been so much stronger without Thorne's perspective because there's this huge mystery about what's wrong with Rune. Like, what's going on with her that we don't understand. If that had been the whole point of the novel, I think it could have been really strong because there's been a lot of suspense. But we learn almost off the bat what these guys' intention for Rune is. Really? Okay. That's something that Howard did throughout this entire book. Overwriting, oversharing. She left nothing to the imagination. And the one thing she did kind of string us along with, which was, what is Rune? It's like she never gave us enough. She just was really cryptic and vague, and I was like, just get on with it already. The one thing that really matters, and you say something without saying anything at all. I thought that it could have been more effective if she had strung us along with Rune chasing after this phantom figure rather than getting to see this phantom figures side of things. And like, he was literally a stalker. He would watch everybody from the other side of the glass. So the thing is, the phantom was a mysterious benefactor who this opera house had burned previously. And so he had paid to have it redone, but to his specifications. And so part of those specifications were these glass walls, which turned out to be basically a one-way mirror. And so Thorne would like watch Rune. But you know, the only person who could see him was Rune out of all the, I don't know, dozens or 100 students at this school. Only one person was ever at the right angle to see the weird creepy guy on the other side. I think I need that really terrible margarita. All right, guys. So I think I'm going to cut it here for a little bit because it's getting a little bit long, but I'm going to post the rest tomorrow. We're going to do a lot of clip reading because holy cow, there's a lot in this book that needs to be made fun of. I hope to see you later as we continue with the travesty that is Roseblood. Bye.